Right now, my projection for my top 10 books of the year has 5 from October. So, I would say I read a lot of good books. Hello everyone, and it is time for another monthly wrap-up so I can talk about all the books that I don't have time to review, because I don't have time to make 8 reviews every month, because student and work. It just isn't full-time. So, we have another wrap-up, and, other things other than reading aside, from a reading perspective, this may be the best reading month of my entire life, in terms of being a lot of books, not the most insane quantity, but in terms of the quality of books I read, it was completely insane. I read 8 books in the month of October. 1 of those was a reread, and 7 of them were new books. And the first book I read was 4 stars. And that wasn't a reread. And then everything after that was 5 stars. That was 7 straight 5 stars, 6 of them being new books. The previous longest streak I could find was 4. So that was the longest ever streak of 5-star books. And I mean, then didn't just do 5, I did 6. And so I mean, it's not like they were all easy 5 stars, but a number of them were like pretty comfortably 5 stars. So first, we are going to talk about the book I reread, which was Tigana by Mr. Guy Gavriel, his most well-known book by far. And this I did on audio, which for those of you who hear a lot know, I don't really do audio. I decided to try an audio reread because I was curious, and I basically learned 2 things from this audio reread. One, in terms of retention of what happened, it worked pretty well. I felt like I knew what happened. But where it failed was, I did enjoy the audio parts less, and I read the last chapter physically to make sure because I was pretty sure, I was like, no, I like Tigana this much, so I read the last chapter physically, and I was like, okay. So the difference is, when I'm reading an audio, I'll hear something, and I'll be like, oh, that was good writing, but it just doesn't get me as emotionally involved. So if I read like a triumphant moment, if I'm reading a person, I'll be like, let's go! If I'm reading it in audio, I'll be like, that was well written. So I'm gonna continue to do audio rereads, but I'm gonna make a rule that I will never change a score I gave a book based on my audio reread, just because I'm not able to emotionally connect in the same way, so I think it would be kind of unfair for books to reread them and lower the score, because I think I'll probably enjoy... I still was enjoying it quite a bit on audio, but just not to the same degree as I was physically. So I'll probably keep doing audio rereads for books that I know I like and I want to reread. Anyway, that is the one book I reread. And next we have the only slightly unfortunate switch, because my least favorite book of the month was actually The Ask and the Answer by Patrick Ness, which, if you remember my September wrap-up, book 1 of this trilogy, The Knife of Never Letting Go, was my book of the month. This is a combination of 2 things. One, October was a more competitive reading month, but also I liked this. I liked it, but I liked it quite a bit less than The Knife of Never Letting Go. And right now I'm about 2/3 of the way done Monsters of Men, and I like it more than this and less than book 1. I respect what this was trying to do. It's very much, it's based around a conflict between 2 people, both of whom are charismatic and but morally questionable. There was more to it than that. This was a lot more actively interacting with the antagonists. And I just did find a lot of the interactions frustrating to read, unfortunately. Even though, I think quality-wise, it was still very good. The setting is still really interesting. It does also, book 1, the mystery for the start of the story had so much momentum because there were so many interesting mysteries, and this just had less. So I gave this a 7 point something. It'd be a middle 4-star, middle 3.5, 4-star, 7.4 out of 10, whatever. I could see someone liking it as much and more, because it is a different story, but I definitely pretty vastly preferred The Knife of Never Letting Go. I just did find some of our two protagonists a bit frustrating, but it was still, like, really well paced, and I really like what it was trying to do, or not what it did, like, what the story was about. Like, I like the story, I like the characters, the world's really cool, and the writing just works really well, and it's kind of easy, very readable. Anyway, next, that's the only non-5-star book, so let's move on, and I'm going to just talk about the next two together. And it was the second half of Book of the New Sun, The Sword of the Lictor, and The Citadel of the Autarch. Sword of the Lictor was actually my favorite. The third one is very hard to talk about, especially without spoiling the first two, but I will say it continued to be weird. Severian continued to be a really interesting character. It continued to be challenging, and the ending had some pretty wild things that I definitely did not see coming, despite the fact that it was first-person retrospective. I will say this is not, like, the most emotional read, but it's just so engaging. Something about, like, the way it's written and, like, figuring out what's going on, and just everything is so interesting and engaging, like, intellectually engaging. Like, the process of, like, reading and trying to figure out stuff was just really made it an enjoyable read for me. They were very dense. I read this in the background. This was not the main book, except I did read Citadel of the Autarch as the main book because I wanted to get it done in October, and we were getting towards the end of the month. I read it on October 31st. But yeah, definitely big fan of Book of the New Sun. I'm gonna have to reread it. So it's very hard to give a score. I gave these like 9 and 9.2, but this was very hard series to give a score to, but I definitely enjoyed them quite a bit, and they were extremely impressive. And yeah, Sword of the Lictor is on pace to be in my top 10 books, every top 10 books of 2022. And next we have The Curse of Chalion by Louis McMaster Bujold. I think I pronounced that wrong. This was excellent. This has been compared to Hob a lot, and I definitely see the comparison. It's a lot tighter than Hob. It's still like methodical and pretty slow paced and character driven, but the actual plot itself is like really tightly woven to the point where I actually don't know if you can cut a scene from this book. And when I say that, like, a lot of the time people just say like this should be shorter. Or when they say, like, oh, it could have been shorter, they're also implying it should have been shorter. A lot of the time, I think I read books that could be shorter. I mean, most books could be shorter, but that doesn't mean they should be shorter. Like, I can read a scene and be like, this isn't implicitly important for this to be a cohesive narrative, but I still, like, enjoy the scene and enjoy what it adds. There are a lot of scenes in this book where it's like, at first when I read it, I thought it was like character building or building the setting or exploring themes, and then it ended up coming back and tying in and being directly plot relevant. It was incredibly tight story with really well written characters. One thing that I think gives it a similar feel to Hob is that I think the protagonist of this story would be one of the supporting, like, everyone's favorite side character. If a lot of other authors told this novel, and the Princess Iselle would be the protagonist, but we follow a worn-down soldier, Kazaril, returning home after a number of military disasters, and then it ends up being driven by political intrigue, and I think the characters didn't instantly, I didn't get instantly attached to them. They didn't, the side character weren't instantly vivid, but they just kept feeling more and more like people as I went on. And so I think they were better at feeling like people compared to someone who's the opposite would be like Joe Abercrombie. You can read about a character for one page and you know who they are already. This didn't quite do that to the same degree, but it ended up being very impressed, and I ended up finding almost the entire cast really interesting by the end of the novel. So it also gets a 9.2 out of 10, and probably could get an even higher score for others, but I kind of like indulgent novels, but really good. Definitely will be reading a lot from Bujold in 2023. Okay, next up, we had the read for our University Book Club, which by the time I upload this, my review of this should be up, which is Exhalation by Exhalation. Exhalation, anyway, by Ted Chiang, which is a short story collection. Exhalation is just one of the short stories. I think there's like 9 short stories in here, varying from like a couple that are like 4 pages and 11 pages, and then there's a full novella that's like 140 pages. I'm going to have a review up if you want more in-depth thoughts on each story, but basically I thought they were really good on average, with a few of them being completely brilliant. Most of them, like, I thought I really enjoyed, and then one that, like, I hate. But it's 4 pages long, so it doesn't really matter that I hate it, because this was still excellent. The author, really, really smart author, you can tell, very much does a good job at having some kind of concept and tying it back into the human condition. Some reoccurring themes that were covered really well. My favorite 3 would be the titular one, Exhalation, Merchant of the Alchemist Gate, and The Truth of Fact and the Truth of Feeling. We will move on to 2 books that was also a 9.2. We got 2 books that I gave an even higher score and are competing for Book of the Month. And I honestly do not know which one I'm going to give Book of the Month. But I'm going to have to pick one. I might contradict myself later in my top 10 list at the end of the year and not pick the one I have Book of the Month. I don't know. These were very, very close. But I'll first go with The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu, the follow-up to Grace of Kings. I really liked Grace of Kings. I liked Wall of Storms a lot more. Like, it's not even close. I mean, we went from, like, a solid 4-star to this being, like, easily 5 stars on Goodreads, and probably one of the 5 best books I've read all year. This is a huge book, but it's really one of the books that manages to be really rich in terms of theme, character, and writing, while also straight up page turning me and one more chaptering me into the 3 a.m.s a number of times. It's really a tight narrative, and it is paced exquisitely well. I think there are only like 3 books I can think of that are this long and are paced like this well, and that's like A Storm of Swords, Words of Radiance, and Demon in White. Like, it's paced exquisitely. I think the writing was like, I thought it was, again, quite good in Grace of Kings, and I thought it was like noticeably improved in Wall of Storms. It's much less zoomed out than Grace of Kings is. It's more what you would expect in a fantasy narrative. But still a lot happens. But I think Grace of Kings very much felt like a trade-off to me, where it felt like, okay, it's really cool that it's managed to cover this much stuff, but it did that while slightly sacrificing because I felt distant from the characters. This did not make that compromise. Still a lot of stuff happened, but I felt like I knew the characters way more, and it felt like it went much deeper into the heads of the characters. So, excellent, excellent, excellent book. Crazy world as well. Dara, extremely well done. And that leaves for my maybe joint book of the month, but we'll say, actually, you know what? We'll go book of the month. A series I've been reading for more than a year. Made my review for one of my most recent videos, is the finale of The Black Company, Soldiers Live by Glenn Cook. This is quite simply one of the best final books to a series I have read. I don't know what I would want more from Glenn Cook. Any score I give this below 10 is not because I think, like, Glenn Cook could have done it better, but just because, you know, I like some books more just because I like some authors' writing and characterization a little bit more than Glenn Cook. But I thought this kept so true to what The Black Company is and just did it better than, like, every other Black Company novel. And I thought it was exquisite. The amount of... Like, there are literally characters introduced in this book. Hey, I wonder where Erickson got it from. Except those characters are, like, were one of my favorite parts of the book. Like, they were amazing. It was the combination of, like, giving the people I've known, like, the characters I've known for a long time, and the newer people their time was amazing. The stakes have never been higher in a Black Company book. And it came to a resolution that I thought was exquisite. I don't know what else I could ask from Glenn Cook for a novel. It really did everything I would have wanted from the finale of The Black Company, and it introduced the single best tagline for any fantasy or sci-fi, or for any novel I have read, which is Soldiers Live and Wonder Why. Yeah, I couldn't be happier with the way this wrapped up. I ended up liking The Black Company a lot more than I expected to. If you'd asked me before I read this what I thought, like, I know this series isn't going to be for everyone. I love Soldiers Live because I love the entire Black Company. Like, if you don't like the Black Company, you're probably not. It's still the Black Company. And I know I can't recommend this to everyone, which is why I have a relatively long review, because I kind of talk about it. But I really enjoyed this series. It probably is going to squeeze into my top 10 if I updated it right now. And it did so. What was holding it back was I liked all the books, but there wasn't enough that like I loved, enough 5 stars, but then the last 2 were my 2 favorites, so that got fixed with Soldiers Live being pretty comfortably my favorite in the series. So there you go. That is, I went full 5-star strumpet this month, but it's because these were like, look back at the month and it feels kind of like, what's the point of 5 stars if I just give like 7 books in a month 5 stars? But I mean, then I look at the books and I'm like, all right, which one am I going to not give 5 stars? And it's none of them. And it's not like I'm doing this every month, but this is literally maybe the best reading month of my life in terms of quality. So there's going to be a lot of 5 stars on when you read the best selection of books I've maybe like ever read in a row. So it's funny because I've seen a lot of other people be like, oh, October was kind of mixed for me, and I think I just stole all your good books. So I got all the good books this month. Let me know if you guys have read any of these and what you thought. Yeah, and I'm curious to see what you guys think of these. I guess I can't really be a hater for any of these except arguably like asking the answer, because I loved all of them. So no possibility basically of me having drank Haterade. So have a nice day, everyone.